This is the Cross-Centered Books Podcast, where we talk about Christian books and connect readers to authors and authors to readers. Here's your host, author of the best-selling book, Upward Entrepreneur, Matt Irons.
Hello and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Matt Irons. This is the Cross-Centered Books Podcast, where we talk about Christian books and we connect readers to authors and authors to readers. Are you looking for a new Christian book, but you don't want to spend an arm and a leg? Then visit CrossCenteredBooks.com. Get alerts for discount and free Christian ebooks right in your inbox. Plus, get updates for new episodes of this podcast. Visit CrossCenteredBooks.com. Hello, everyone. I am super excited to bring you our featured guest today, Tracy Wainwright. Tracy is the author of the book, A Transformed Mind, Change Your Thoughts to Change Your Life. She has written 8 books that range from nonfiction to fiction titles. Tracy, thank you so much for being on the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure. So I gave just a very brief introduction. So let's fill in some of those gaps and tell us a little bit more about your personal life.
Well, thank you. Of course, my personal life starts with my husband and 4 children who are just my top of all of them. I've been married for 14 years. I can always keep track of that because our oldest just turned 13. We also have an 11-year-old, a 9-year-old, and an almost 7-year-old. We have our last birthday next week. My homeschool, a lot of my personal life is sitting at tables and desks and sometimes learning throughout the day. I love homeschooling, although never thought I would do it. I also am very active in my home church, family here, and have had the pleasure of serving in a variety of different roles. I've had a chance to work with missions. I am the team leader with the women's ministry currently and have been running a women's conference for the last 6 years.
Wow.
So all of those things, I stay a little busy.
Now, as far as writing is concerned, how are you able to do that by juggling so many things, by homeschooling, by the ministries you run and operate, and then now writing? How are you able to do that with such a full life?
That's a great question. It's one I actually get a lot. And it's always funny to me when I listen to other authors talk and give advice and they say, write at least 15 minutes every day. Make it consistent. And my writing life is anything but consistent because sometimes we have so many other things going on. I don't even look at my computer. And other days I write, 4, 5, 6 hours. Sometimes it's waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning and I can't go to sleep and there's just an idea stirring and I've got to get it on paper. Sometimes it's staying up late past when the kids go to bed. So I really just take it day by day and week by week and write whenever I can. I've learned to use my notes on my cell phone to jot things down or even to speak into it while I'm driving down the road if an idea hits so I don't lose it. And we're actually entering one of my favorite writing times of year because we're closing out the school year, which means I get a lot more free time. So in the next 2.5 to 3 months, I'll probably get the bulk of my writing done for the year.
I think you said some really key things, which I just wanted to touch on. And that's one, to staying consistent, even if you can just do just a little bit a day, whether if it's really early in the morning or really late at night, but just doing that consistency is super important. And then I also like what you said too about using your notes in your cell phone. I do that too, where, you have that idea, you got to just get it out because you're going to get distracted with so many other things. You're going to lose it. And that could be a real inspirational idea and it could really help a lot of people. Now, take us back and tell us what inspired you to write. Was there a point in time where God just changed your heart or gripped your soul and made you say, hey, I need to get my message out in the world?
Yes, definitely for me. I'm not one of those people that just always wrote and always loved writing and just knew that's what I wanted to do forever. I was actually that student who could not stand research papers, did not like essay tests, writing was not something that I enjoyed or ever thought I would do. And when God really started changing that for me was after my second child, my son, was born, and I was a stay-at-home mom for the first time. There was just a lot of emotions, a lot of challenges and struggles around just not working pretty much for the first time since I was 14. I had extra little ones around the house because I was doing childcare to supplement our family income. And just, there's always that at work or at home debate that goes on. So I just started pouring out all these emotions on paper. And because I have a background in psychology and counseling, I included research in all of that pouring out and just started writing and started falling in love with it. And that book's still sitting in file folders. I haven't ever done anything with it other than trying to get it out there initially and probably too early before I really knew what I was doing. But out of that, God just grew this desire for, as he was walking me through this new life that I was living as a mom with young kids and being at home, and as he began teaching me things through that and through other situations that I went through and sharing what he was teaching me with other people through writing that, and just gave me a passion for it, whereas now I can't imagine my life without that being part of who I am.
Now, you mentioned just very briefly, in the introduction, just in terms of your writing process. Can you dive in a little bit deeper in that as far as, is there a certain process that you have in writing your books? Walk us through that a little bit.
Sure. And I really don't have a certain way that I write. And it has developed and changed a little bit over time. But for instance, the series I'm working on right now, the Transform series, when I started developing that, I developed each title. And then as I started writing the books, I developed an outline and then the points that within the outline and filled in all those gaps. I've also done that somewhat in some of my fiction. There's some of my fiction books, either in the works or the ones that I've published already, where I've made that outline. I've kind of known the steps from beginning to end when I started. And then there are those books that just seem to write themselves. So I have a scene in my head. I put that down on paper. It starts the book, and I really don't know where it's going to go from that point. And the book just seems to write itself. So there are some diehard outline people, and there are some diehard just write it and get it on paper and worry about the rest later people. And I really have found that it depends on the books for me. That some books just, the characters want to write themselves, and other books just require that planning. Certainly with my nonfiction, it takes a lot more planning, but the Bible study that I did on living stress-free was one of those that just kind of wrote itself. Each chapter just kind of came as I was writing it, and that wasn't one that I knew beginning to end from the very start. So it's very different process, which to me makes it even more fun and exciting because I just never know what's going to come next sometimes.
Absolutely. Just kind of that whole creative process there of just things just having that outward flow. And I can definitely understand what you're saying as far as the different types of books really kind of have inherently their own process in themselves. So I can definitely understand for the nonfiction, it's very linear. You have part 1, 2, 3. You need to go through A to Z and have a finish line to make sure you're filling in all those gaps. But the fiction side of things, where it's just you want to make sure you just get your ideas out there, develop the characters, develop the storyline, and then it just starts to begin to take shape. For our readers out there who may not know you and may be looking for something new, what would your work be similar to? For example, if you like books from blank, then you love me.
Right. Well, and of course, the authors that come to mind are the ones that are the super popular, really, really well-known authors. They just automatically, jump to my head. And for fear of setting myself up for great disappointment, I certainly don't want to compare myself to them. And I'm just not really good for one to designate just author styles, I guess. I enjoy such a variety of books. And my books have such a variety. I have children's books, young adult, adult fiction, Bible study, nonfiction. So they really run the gamut. But I think my style tends to be to the point. I don't like a lot of fluff. They're very straightforward. I like to be very practical. Even in my fiction books, there's always some kind of practicality that's included in the characters. Both of my young adult and adult fiction book, I present the gospel in both of them through the characters' discovery process. One of them's in a very apologetic format, and the other's in a very life crisis, just come to Jesus because you're the end of yourself point. So just very practical, and I try to be not too flowery, but entertaining. Certainly, I think humor is probably my weakest point. So if you're looking for a book that you're going to laugh out loud multiple times, that would not be mine. But if you're looking for entertainment with my fiction books, with a little bit of encouragement and then just nuggets. So the books that just have those nuggets that you can take with you. And that's the feedback that I've been so blessed to get from my books, is that they are straightforward and sometimes on the short end. I'm kind of short and to the point when I say things, but I try to make that point have power in it.
And that, I think, leads to a great segue to our book spotlight section of our show. So tell us a little bit about your new book, A Transformed Mind, Change Your Thoughts to Change Your Life.
Yes, and this book came out of just searching last year. I went through a period of an intense Bible reading and came out of that just searching for focus, really, with doing women's ministry, involved in missions, homeschooling, writing, speaking, have all these different branches of ministry in my life. And what's the common denominator? And what kept coming up as I was just really seeking what direction and trying to hone in my focus and really what I have to offer other people, it's that transformed life. And that's simply because God has worked that so greatly in me, that I am not the same person that I was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. That, we have that transformation that comes in when we're saved, from death to life and from, sinner to righteousness. But we also just have this transformation process that we are continually going through. And I've been in a situation over the last year or so that is not a bad situation, but it's offered some challenges. And just seeing how God has used that to bring me that much closer to Him, that much more needing Him, and transforming who I am continually to be more like Him. And I just knew when I went to approach this new series that the mind had to be first. Because what the Lord has taught me is when I change my thoughts around my circumstances and I change my perspective, then I change everything about my life. I change how I treat other people. I change how my attitude is. I change how my physical health is. All of those things start with the mind. And then I started searching the scriptures to prepare for the book. And it was phenomenal. I knew that the Bible talked about the mind and that our thoughts were a thing that was included in the Bible, but it's really pervasive throughout the Old Testament and New Testament, how important our thoughts are. Fixing our thoughts on Jesus and thinking on the things that He would have us think on and having that eternal mindset. And it just changes our perspective totally and completely of our life here. And as God was teaching me those things and preparing to write the book, I just knew that it was something that God was changing in me and has been changing in me, although I wasn't very cognizant or intentional about it, and thought, wow, if I could become intentional about this and share that with other people, that they can become intentional about that.